I had paid my own way through college, started my own small business, and kept my distance financially and emotionally after years of being used as the family's personal safety net. None of that seemed to matter. In their eyes, I was still the problem child, the ungrateful one. Halfway through dinner, while Amanda was gushing about some bonus she got, my mom rolled her eyes dramatically and muttered, loud enough for the entire table to hear, "Honestly, you're the family's biggest regret." I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink. I just put down my fork carefully, folded my napkin, stood up, and walked out without a word. I could feel the heat of their stares, hear the stunned silence ripple around the room, but I didn't look back. I drove home that night gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wasn't angry, not exactly. It was something colder, deeper, a quiet finality sinking into my bones. Over the next few weeks, I stayed low. No family group chats, no phone calls, no birthday wishes to Amanda when her birthday rolled around. I wasn't punishing them. I was just done. Really, truly done. And because I was done, I stopped doing the things I used to do for them without thinking. The electricity bill that I used to quietly pay because Dad had been out of work last year, I canceled my automatic payments. The truck payments I had been secretly covering because they were about to lose their only means of transportation, gone. The little financial safety nets I had woven for them, stitch by stitch, over the years, they all unraveled the moment I stepped away. I didn't really expect them to notice right away. They were so used to things magically working out, assuming it was just luck, or that the universe would always hand them a cushion. I figured it would take a while before they felt the effects. It didn't. About a month after that dinner, my phone exploded with a call from Amanda. I stared at her name flashing across my screen for a long moment before I picked up, curious more than anything. The first thing I heard was screaming. "Alex, why did they tow Dad's truck? Why is the electricity shut off?" Mom's freaking out. Dad's threatening to sue the power company. And I swear if you had anything to do with this. I cut her off, my voice calm. "I didn't do anything to you. I just stopped doing things for you." There was a stunned pause, like she genuinely couldn't comprehend what that meant. Then the yelling started again, accusations flying at rapid-fire speed. I didn't respond. I just ended the call, typed out a short, cutting text, "Regrets don't keep the lights on," and turned off my phone. Part of me expected to feel guilty. That old reflex to make things better, to fix it all, to be the silent backbone they leaned on without ever thanking me. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt light. Free, almost. Like I had been carrying a weight for so long that I forgot what it was like to walk without it. Over the next few days, word trickled in through mutual acquaintances. My parents were spiraling. Dad's truck, the same old pickup he had refused to upgrade because it was reliable, had been repossessed when they missed 3 months of payments. The electricity at the house was out because the utility company had finally caught on to the unpaid balance racking up under my name. Back when I had stupidly offered to help out during a tough time and never got around to switching it back over. Apparently, they were scrambling, furious, blaming everyone but themselves. Amanda was calling every relative she could think of, spinning a story about how I had betrayed the family, left them high and dry. But the thing about constant takers is that eventually, people get tired of giving. The sympathy they expected wasn't exactly pouring in. I kept to myself, kept working, kept building the life they had mocked me for chasing. But the part that hit hardest, the part that stayed with me, was realizing how little they actually knew about me. They didn't even know what I did for a living. Amanda once joked at a family barbecue that I sold rocks on Etsy or something, and everyone laughed like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. Meanwhile, my consulting business was bringing in more income than both my parents' jobs combined. Sitting alone in my apartment one evening, watching the sun set over the city skyline, I thought about all the birthdays, holidays, and milestones I had spent trying to earn their approval. All the moments I had twisted myself into something smaller, quieter, more palatable. All the times I had bailed them out because some desperate part of me still clung to the hope that if I just did one more thing, just gave a little more, maybe they'd finally see me. And now, they were drowning in the mess they made. I should have felt triumphant. Maybe part of me did. But mostly, I just felt tired. Tired of carrying guilt that was never mine to begin with. Tired of pretending that family means unconditional loyalty, even when it's one-sided. Still, as the messages and voicemails piled up, first angry, then desperate, then pitiful, I knew this was only the beginning, because I hadn't even touched the biggest string yet. And once I did, everything they thought they still had would come crashing down around them. The turning point came late one Friday night, 2 weeks after Amanda's screaming call. I had just finished a project for a client, a massive one that would secure my income for the next year, and I was lying on the couch, flipping through channels mindlessly, when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my dad. The message was short. "You owe us. You wouldn't be where you are without everything we sacrificed." I stared at the words, feeling the familiar mix of disbelief and cold rage settle in my gut. Owe them? For what? For the years of emotional neglect? For the endless gaslighting that told me I was never enough, even as I bent over backward trying to support them? No, that was the final straw. They had no idea how much of their life was still tethered to me. No idea that the sacrifices they made, the ones they lorded over my head, were bankrolled by loans I had co-signed, by utilities in my name, by property taxes quietly paid behind the scenes. And they really had no idea that I was about to cut the last remaining cord. You see, about a year prior, when they were teetering on the edge of losing their house, Dad had come to me, hat in hand, asking for help. He blamed the economy, blamed bad luck, blamed everyone except his own reckless spending. I was still naive enough to believe I could fix things back then, so I agreed to help under one condition, that the house title be partially signed over to me, just to ensure some level of responsibility. He agreed. He didn't care about the fine print. He just needed money, fast. I spent the next month bailing them out, setting up payment plans, negotiating debts. They didn't thank me. They barely acknowledged it. Once the immediate crisis was over, they went right back to treating me like a burden they tolerated. But legally, that house wasn't just theirs anymore. It was mine, too. So that night, as my dad's message simmered on my screen, I pulled up the paperwork from the safe in my closet. I read through it carefully, heart pounding, not with fear, but with an electric, buzzing anticipation. The documents were airtight. My lawyer had made sure of that after the first time Dad tried to reinterpret a verbal agreement. In short, I had the legal right to force a sale of the property. And so, I did. I filed the papers Monday morning. Quietly. Efficiently. No warning. No phone call. They would find out the way I had found out about being the biggest regret publicly, unavoidably, and with no chance to spin the story in their favor. The eviction notice would come later, but first, there would be a court hearing. They'd get a letter in the mail explaining everything, that due to failure to uphold financial obligations, I was exercising my right to liquidate the property and recover my investment. They wouldn't be able to stop it. Not unless they somehow came up with the tens of thousands of dollars they owed. And given that they couldn't even keep the lights on, I wasn't exactly worried. I didn't go to the hearing. I didn't need to. My lawyer handled everything. But I heard about it afterward through a mutual friend, one of the few family members who had quietly cut ties with the rest years ago. Apparently, Mom showed up furious, flailing and crying about how family doesn't sue family. Dad tried to swagger his way through it at first, blustering about understandings and loyalty. But when the judge pointed out the signed contracts with his signature on every page, he deflated like a sad balloon. Amanda wasn't even there. She had moved in with her boyfriend across town and hadn't looked back since the electricity got shut off. Typical. The house was ordered to be sold within 90 days. If they didn't vacate willingly, they would be forcibly removed. And given the state of their finances, there was zero chance they could buy me out or refinance. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the kid begging for a seat at the table. I was the one flipping the table over entirely. I kept my distance in the days that followed, but the messages didn't stop. My mom sent email after email, swinging between venom and begging. Dad tried to call a few times, leaving long-winded voicemails where he tried to guilt-trip me about everything they did and how they raised me. Amanda? She sent a single text. "You're disgusting. I hope you're happy." I didn't reply. What was there to say? They were reaping what they had sown. I had given them chance after chance. Years of my life. Tens of thousands of dollars. Every last scrap of patience and forgiveness I had. And they had thrown it away with a roll of the eyes and a single, cutting sentence. "You're the family's biggest regret." Maybe they had expected me to come crawling back. Maybe they thought they could insult me, use me, discard me, and I'd still be there, desperate for their approval. But I wasn't that kid anymore. I was done begging for scraps from a table I had built with my own two hands. Still, part of me wondered if they understood, really understood, what was about to happen. Because losing the house? That was just the start. There was still one more domino left to fall. And once it did, there would be no going back. The first sign that things were slipping beyond their control came about 3 weeks later. I was sitting at a coffee shop on a Saturday morning, flipping through some design drafts for a new project, when I got a notification from the county office. A lien had been placed on the house. Apparently, my parents had tried to take out a desperate loan to stop the forced sale, and predictably, they defaulted almost immediately. I wasn't surprised. What had surprised me was just how fast everything started crumbling after that. It was like one wrong move had triggered an avalanche they couldn't outrun. According to my lawyer, once the lien was attached, the value of the property dropped. Not drastically, just enough to ensure that after the debts were paid off, there wouldn't be much left. Certainly not enough for them to start over, the way my mom kept screaming about in her increasingly unhinged emails. She wrote like I was some villain, lurking in the shadows, plotting her downfall, when all I had really done was finally, stop saving them from themselves. A week after that, Amanda showed up at my building. I live in a mid-rise, nothing fancy, but secure enough that you can't just wander in off the street. She must have tailgated someone through the entrance because I found her pounding on my door, her voice carrying down the hall. I opened it just a crack, keeping the chain on. The sight of her startled me. She looked worn out, pale, with deep bags under her eyes, like she hadn't slept in days. Her voice was raw when she said, "Alex, please. You don't understand what you're doing. You're ruining everything." I kept my expression blank. "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just letting reality catch up." She flinched like I had slapped her. "You're punishing mom and dad because you're bitter," she hissed. "You're selfish. You're always so cold." Cold. That word again. They loved throwing it at me, didn't they? Every time I refused to jump back into the fire they lit. Every time I protected myself instead of bleeding out for them, I was cold. "Maybe," I said, my voice low. "But I'm not stupid anymore." Amanda's face crumpled for a second, just a flicker of real emotion, before the anger took over again. "They're your family, Alex. Families forgive each other." I closed the door a little further, leaving just enough space for her to hear the final words before I shut it in her face. "Families don't make you regret being born." The click of the chain sliding into place was deafening in the silence that followed. I didn't look through the peephole. I didn't wait to see if she left. I just walked back to my living room and sat down, my heart pounding, not with regret, but with grim determination. I thought that might be the end of it. That maybe, just maybe, they'd finally get the hint. I underestimated them. Again. Because 2 days later, I found out they were planning something. They were trying to challenge the sale. Not through legal channels, no, they knew they had no case there. They were trying to sabotage it from the inside. I heard from a mutual acquaintance, someone who, bless their heart, couldn't stand my parents either, that mom had been bragging about making sure no one would want to buy the house. "They can't take what no one wants," she had laughed. According to the message I got, they had already started. Trash piled up in the yard. Spray paint on the garage door. Broken windows. They were trashing their own home out of spite, thinking they could scare off any potential buyers. It was petty. It was childish. It was so them. And it didn't even matter. Because while they were busy vandalizing the property, while they thought they were playing some kind of last-ditch power game, they didn't realize one crucial detail. The bank had already approved a short sale. They didn't need to sell the house to a private buyer. The bank was going to take it off their hands regardless, fix it up later if needed, and resell it at a loss if it came to that. Their tantrum was pointless. All they were doing was speeding up their own eviction. When I got the confirmation email, I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, letting it all sink in. It was happening. There was no stopping it now. Still, even as I sat there feeling the weight of everything crashing down around them, there was one more thing gnawing at the edges of my mind. Something I hadn't even touched yet. Something that would hit them harder than losing the house, harder than losing their car, their credit, their security. They thought they were fighting for survival. They had no idea the real fight hadn't even started yet. Because tucked away in a file folder in my desk drawer was one final card. A document Dad had signed 5 years ago when he was desperate for a loan to save his failing construction business. A document that named me as a lien holder not just on the house, but on the business itself. And once I filed the paperwork attached to that lien, let's just say they wouldn't just be losing their home. They'd be losing everything. I sat at my desk that night, the city lights twinkling outside my window, the file folder open in front of me. My hands hovered over the paperwork, not because I was unsure, but because I was finally allowing myself to feel the weight of what I was about to do. It would be the final blow. No more safety nets. No more second chances. Dad's construction business, Warren Family Builders, had been struggling for years. He blamed the economy, cheap labor, bad luck, anything he could think of. What he didn't mention, what he never could admit, was that he was bad at running it. He didn't pay taxes on time. He burned bridges with suppliers. He took jobs he wasn't qualified for because his pride wouldn't let him say no. 5 years ago, he had come to me in a panic, begging for help. He said he just needed a small investment, enough to keep things afloat until the next big job came through. I had my doubts even then, but against my better judgment, and out of some desperate, aching hope that maybe this time would be different, I agreed. The contract was simple. I would loan him the money, and in exchange, I would hold a lien against the company. If he defaulted, if he failed to pay me back, I would have the legal right to claim the business assets, equipment, tools, vehicles, even the name, if I wanted it. Of course, Dad never paid me back. He never even tried. And deep down, I think I always knew this moment would come. So I sat there, pen in hand, heart steady, and signed the paperwork. The next morning, I filed everything through my lawyer. It didn't take long after that. Within 2 weeks, Dad got the notice. The business was being seized. The equipment would be sold at auction. The contracts he had lined up, what little he had left, would be void. The licensing would be revoked pending the outcome of his debt obligations. The day the notice arrived, he showed up at my apartment. I watched through the peephole as he banged on my door, his face red, his fist clenched, a broken man pretending he still had some kind of power over me. I didn't open it. He stood there for a long time shouting. First it was anger, "You selfish little snake. After everything we did for you." Then it was bargaining, "Alex, come on, we're family. We can fix this." Finally, it was pure, pathetic pleading, "Please, son, I'm begging you. We're ruined without the business." I leaned against the wall and listened, arms crossed over my chest. There was a time when that would have shattered me. A time when I would have rushed to open the door, to apologize, to offer money I couldn't afford to lose just to keep the peace. But not anymore. I had given them everything I could. Time, money, love, loyalty. All they had ever given me in return was regret. After about 20 minutes, he left. I watched from my window as he trudged back to his rusted-out sedan, the one Amanda had bought him after the truck was repossessed, and drove away, the taillight dangling like a loose tooth. It should have felt triumphant. Some grand, victorious moment. Instead, it just felt quiet. Not empty. Not hollow. Just peaceful. The house sold a month later. They were forced to move out, with nothing to their names but a few battered pieces of furniture and a mountain of debt they had no way to pay. Mom tried to stay